BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Martin Dowden and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Wednesday the 10th of September. Today we're turning our attention to the East.
Like I say, I think there's maybe been raised expectations. I think there should always be an expectation of a Hearts team and a Hearts player and a Hearts manager. We've just got to meet the expectations that's expected.
Derek McInnes knows what's expected at Hearts, and they're not the only club in Edinburgh with ambitions this season.
Long range shot and goal! Oh! What a strike that is! Josh Mulligan's an absolute belter.
Could this be the campaign where one of the capital clubs splits the old firm and someone's got a new job?
Former Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou is back in football. He's been appointed as Nottingham Forest's new head coach after the sacking of Nuno Espirito Santo last night.
And we'll discuss the former Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou, who's the new manager at Nottingham Forest, a club that were linked with a move for Brendan Rodgers.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Quick hello to our guest today, Joel Sked, the editor of the Hearts Standard. Hello to you, Joel. Thanks very much for joining us. And Scott Allan, the former Hibs, Celtic and various other midfielder. Let's start right away at Tynecastle. Hearts facing a real test of their ambitions this weekend as they face Rangers at Ibrox. Joel, this would seem a very big test for Hearts, a really strong start for them, certainly in terms of points. But to go and back that up at Ibrox would be quite a big statement, wouldn't it?
It would be, considering the record, Hearts' record at Ibrox is abhorrent. I think 3 wins at Ibrox this century, so that tells you how poor it is. I think it was start of 2020 since the last time Hearts beat Rangers, full stop. So it would end a massive hoodoo, a long-awaited hoodoo. But yes, absolutely, it would be a real statement early on. I think last season Hearts struggled in big games or against teams that they perceive as rivals. Started this season well in that, kind of beating Aberdeen, going away to Tannadice and winning, but beating Rangers would elevate the hopes and the expectation, I think, of some fans this season. And I think it would get a lot of people speaking.
It would indeed. Scott, incredibly, Hearts have the chance to go 9 points clear of Rangers after just 5 games. That's quite something. Do you feel if they want to have a go at the big two this season, perhaps, they need to be thinking of taking something in games like this?
Yeah, I think obviously sitting joint top of the table with Celtic, I think going to Ibrox at a time where Rangers haven't been winning games domestically, I think it would be a big statement for them. It would be a leap forward in terms of confidence. At the same time, I don't think it will be as easy as maybe some Hearts fans maybe expect. I think you look at some of the Rangers players, especially last night on international duty, getting some goals, so they maybe come back with a bit of confidence. Rangers have obviously strengthened in the window as well. At the same time, we're hearing there might be some big players for Hearts missing. Whether they are or not will be interesting, because it wouldn't surprise me if they were fit for the game. But listen, it's a good test for them. I think if you look at the Motherwell game, obviously been 3-0 down, they showed a bit of character to come back. I think the Dundee United game at Tannadice is as well one of the better games I've seen this season. But they have been conceding goals, and that's the only worry I think would be for Derek McInnes. They would want to go there and obviously be kind of sound defensively and look to take their chances when need be. But I still think it's a difficult game for Hearts.
Joel, do you agree with Scott there in terms of what's impressed you with Hearts and what they maybe need to tighten up a little bit on?
Yeah. I think there's been a lot more positives this season. I think there's signs of progress after a really difficult campaign last season, and there's still an integration period for a lot of the new players. Seen with the record signing, Agio came in glimpse against Livingston. Now he's got a hamstring issue, so he could be a risk not. It could be struggling to be back for the derby next week, so that's a big kind of blow going to Ibrox. But there's a real strong mentality and kind of team spirit at Hearts. You see that with the come from behind wins. The team are a real threat from set pieces. They're a real threat from when they go behind. I think 7 points from losing positions already. And yes, Scott mentioned the goals, and that's some goals conceded. that's something that Derek McInnes wants to see more of, is clean sheets. Xander Clark's not had the greatest start to the season. That's anyone watching, I think everyone who's watched games can see that. Brought in a new goalkeeper, Alexander Shrolov, German goalkeeper. Wouldn't be surprised if he started against Rangers, but in terms of kind of structurally being pretty sound. And the big thing compared to last season is Hearts are much more of a goal threat, struggled for goals at times last season, and whereas this season the team I've got more about them in terms of Claudio Braga's came in and had a strong impact. Alexandros Kizaridis, not started the league game yet, but he's had a positive impact every time he's come off the bench. And there's not as much of a reliance on Lauren Shankland. There's not much of a discussion around Lauren Shankland because there is there's much more about Hearts in terms of how they can attack and individuals within that as well.
That's an interesting point about Shankland. I hadn't actually picked up on that, but you're right. No one is really talking about him at all, which I think might benefit him as the season goes on. Scott, you have experience of going to places like Ibrox when you're up against it to an extent. What's key for Hearts going there on Saturday, as far as you're concerned?
I think if you ask anyone in Scottish football, the first kind of thing you're always told to do is try and get the crowd on the players back at Ibrox. What does that look like? That looks like obviously frustrating them at times, and ticking off points in the game where you're starting to feel right. We've still got a chance to maybe go and produce a goal, but I just think it's a little bit different in terms of Rangers' sides. I think there is a huge pressure on them. I think there could be more pressure on some of the players coming in now, just because in terms of performance, for me, it just hasn't been there for Rangers. I think they've looked out with the Celtic game, which I'm going to take in isolation. If you're looking at the other games, Rangers have looked vulnerable defensively. There's no question about that, even from set pieces. And Joe talks about how well Hearts have looked from set pieces. So that could be a moment in a game that can swing it in Hearts' favour. And I think when you do then turn over the ball, especially Ibrox, you've got to keep it at times. You've got to look after the ball. So if you get all the parts right and defensively to a man, everybody's on it, then you give yourself a chance, a platform to go and win the game. But they'll be up against a bit of pressure, you'd imagine, from this Rangers side, because ultimately Russell Martin did change some of his principles against Celtic. Yes, he came away with a draw, and in that moment some Rangers fans were happy, but I think in terms of performance, Rangers, it has to be better in terms of on the ball for them to go and start winning games of football.
Joe, obviously Tony Bloom has raised the expectations around Hearts with some of the things he's said. I think he said they've got a very good chance of finishing second, for example. Does that kind of talk help in your view, or put more pressure on? Because raising the expectations is a good thing in one way, but it also does demand results.
It does. I think from a fan's perspective, I think it's really exciting. It's what you want to hear from your investor or owner. And I think some of the club, when they've came out and talked about challenging the old firm, and it's kind of been thrown back at them, looking back over the last few years and trying to split that gap. But then when Tony Bloom says it, and someone of his kind of calibre, his success in football, in business, and he's kind of been there and done it with taking Brighton from the lower leagues England into the top flight, but more comparable USG and their rise to become Belgian champions. And the fact that the proof's there, and he kind of said that, is that he has seen it in action, and everything that he has kind of worked to or seen firsthand has given him more confidence to say and be bullish with his comments. And I think that's I've probably raised a few eyebrows in the Hearts dressing room, I imagine, but out with that, in terms of the fans and the feeling around the club, I think it's injected an extra bit of positivity. And I think there is an understanding that it's not just going to be a click of the fingers and Hearts are going to be a success and challenging Celtic. But the way that started this season, fans, and I think everyone's kind of thinking, oh, could there be a chance? Still have to remember that Rangers have spent £20 million, I think, this summer. How well they've spent that £20 million, we'll probably get a better idea of as the season progresses. It's a big ask, but if you're a supporter of a club, you want to have a club that or owners or investors that have strong ambition, rather than someone just going, let's just be best of the rest and see what happens.
Let's hear what the man in charge, Derek McInnes, thinks about that expectation on Hearts.
I think needs maybe not the right word, but I think it would be nice if we could go and demonstrate that, and that's what we're searching for. I think, like I say, I think there's maybe been raised expectations. I think there should always be an expectation of a Hearts team and a Hearts player and a Hearts manager. And I do think, as I said, when we came in the job, before Tony said what he said, we've just got to meet the expectations that's expected, and we haven't done that as a club for a bit, so we need to try and be at the very least that, and what is expected is a competitive Hearts team week in, week out, regardless where it is.
A lot of people are already talking you up as strong contenders for third, but maybe even a little bit more. If you were to get anywhere near that down the line, is this game sort of pivotal? An important step.
We're 4 games in. I think regardless of the results, if we win the game, then that's only going to amplify, and everybody's going to be maybe saying a bit more of that. You can't really affect what people think and say whether it's good or not. If we lose a game, it's not going to change either. So I just think that we've got to just see it for what it is. It's 90 minutes. We've got to try and go there and be as good as we can be. I think if we can get to our capabilities, we can get a result, and it's important that we try and show that.
Looking ahead to the game on Saturday, Scott, everyone's talking about Ajew. He's injured. That looks like a big miss already.
Yeah, listen, I think it's still early days for him as well. Obviously, we've seen that fleeting appearance against Lions. There's no doubt he's coming with some real calibre from Santa Clara. I think for me, I think Jan Danda was probably meant to be that sort of player coming from Ross County last season, where you thought he was going to be really creative and pick up pockets where you can really go and create for Hearts. I think most Hearts fans would say that. They've been kind of crying out for a player of that ilk. But I feel it's kind of the balance of the Hearts team going forward is a lot better than it's been in years. Obviously, Kizaridis has been coming off the bench. He looks as if he's got that bit of pace to stretch him in behind. The Lawrence Shankland thing for me, I think taking that bit of pressure off him, and for me he's a key. We'll probably go on to speak about Kieran Bowie, but Lawrence Shankland in terms of hold up plays is as good as any in the country for me. He drops in, he looks to link up. See, when you've got a guy like that, experience that he has, and he knows where the goal is, I just feel that balance in terms of Hearts going forward is a completely different dynamic to what they've had over several seasons for me. So I think there's a lot for Hearts fans to get excited about, and having players of that quality is certainly a big part of it.
Okay, let's switch to the other side of Edinburgh. Hibs sitting third in the table as things stand. Joel, I'll start with you. You're obviously more focused on the maroon side of Hearts, but what have you made of Hibs' start to the season and their squad overall?
I think it's been a really solid start. The European run, I think it's just kind of injected a wee bit more energy and even more energy and enthusiasm into the club and what they've done, and it's probably brought the fans closer to the team just with their away performances and how close they were to getting into the Conference League phase. I think my fear for looking from the outside in at Hibs was the depth of the squad, and I think it's better than I expected it to be. I think they've obviously added a couple more in the final days of the transfer window, but you look at what David Gray has done and what he wants to do, they're quite set in how they line up. They can be flexible within their back three, or they're kind of 3-5-2, but they're kind of quite set in that way, and they've got a really nice balance about them. So yeah, I think if I was looking for someone who would be pushing Hearts for third spot, I think at the moment it'd be Hibs the most likely, considering they also finished third last season.
Scott, did you notice how Joel there was saying all of that nice stuff about Hibs there through gritted teeth? I mean, obviously people listening can't see that, but
it's difficult. I mean, you've got to you've got to be unbiased, but it's difficult.
Yeah. Well done. That was a good effort. Scott, how do you view Hibs as they stand at the moment?
I think they're in a really good place. I think if you if you add in terms of the calibre of teams they had to play in the European football, I think they were to go over there and really compete against them. Obviously, the win away in Partizan, a big result. A result I don't think much of Scottish football was going to happen, but in terms of being organised and carrying a threat, Hibs had it. Midtjylland away, very disciplined performance. And then obviously the Legia Warsaw game were in the second half. Hibs were absolutely outstanding. And listen, they took it all the way to extra time and were so close to qualifying. But I think that's built in terms of just a changing room that looks to have each other's back. I think as well, the quality they have coming off the bench at times. It's a Chaiwa coming in. I've seen him now three times for Hibs, and I think he could be a standout player for Hibs this season. Kieran Bowie, obviously away with the national team. Last week he's been the focal point of the team in terms of hold up play, as I spoke about with Shankland. It's just so important, and he was so over the European games. But because of the kind of manner the European ties, Hibs have had to change it for the domestic games, for the Premiership games. I think you look at Kilmarnock at home, 2-0 up in the first half, 2-0 up until the 44th minute of the first half. They were in complete control and in one goal, and the stadium did get a bit nervy, and it took a Ben Brannan worldie to obviously get Kilmarnock back level. You look at St Mirren, obviously a talking point this week as well, where should it have been a penalty or not, and then they've come out and said it should have been a penalty, so they'll feel a bit hard done to. But I feel in terms of performance within sandwich between the European ties, I think David Gray will be happy enough. I think that'll be the biggest thing for him, the performances there and having cover in certain positions. Like Grant Hanley was outstanding for the national team against Denmark. He hasn't even been in the starting team for Hibernian because of how good Rocky Bashiri's been. So they have cover now, and I think that was the biggest thing for Hibs this window. Could they get guys in who can add to the team, and they most certainly have done that for me. So it's that continuity he's had, and his back three has stood Hibs really well. I just think Martin Boyle, again, someone I played with myself, as he gets older, he just seems to be getting better in terms of energy output, in terms of some of the goals he's been scoring as well. So Hibs and Hearts, I know Joel said for third place, but I think that maybe both might have other ideas. It just depends over the course of a season who manages to stay the course, and the same for Rangers and Celtic as well. Obviously both going through a time just now where there's a lot of pressure from outside, so if there's ever a chance to maybe go and have a run at it, this would be the year.
Joel, do you believe that, we're talking about Hearts as well, maybe challenging for second or maybe beyond, do you believe Hearts and Hibs players are sitting there right now thinking we can realistically do that?
I think they should be if they've watched Celtic and Rangers this season. I think they should be. It's just we're so ingrained, and kind of understandably so in this country, to especially the players who have been around Scottish football, that there's just expectation for Celtic and Rangers to pull away and to kind of get it together. There's been times in the past, both whether it's been Aberdeen, whether it's been Hearts, been Hibs, where they've had a really good start to the season and they find themselves in amongst like the top three or really close to Old Firm, and they just kind of either run out of steam or they just can't quite keep up with Celtic and Rangers. However, I can't remember, I'm trying to think of the last time where Celtic and Rangers looked so poor together. It's usually a case of you're hoping one of them has a disaster season and then you take advantage of it. But both of them look really, really poor at the moment. And like Rangers they look like they're in another transition and they've got a lot of work to do, whereas Celtic, it's more around like the feeling around the club. You look at their probably strongest 11, you still expect that to win the league, but there's just this feeling of uncertainty around Celtic, and I do think that hopefully clubs, mainly Hearts, smell blood and kind of step up and take that. But I think it's really exciting, and it's only 3-4 games in the season, but there's certainly hope that potential for a very interesting season, that's for sure.
Okay, quick one, Scotland under 21s. They were in action against Portugal last night. You were there. How were they looking?
Yeah, I think you're obviously putting them up against a Portugal under 21 side who some of the transfer fees that these guys are going for is incredible for their age. And if you maybe compare to the two teams in terms of the amount of first team experience, like Portugal absolutely drowned Scotland in terms of that. Obviously they have a conveyor belt where they just keep producing these sort of players every couple of years. So in terms of performance for Scotland, I felt in terms of out of possession, they looked good, they looked solid, a good structure. A big chance for Mabudi just before half time, where he probably should have taken the chance, and Scotland would have went in at one each at half time. But ultimately, I just felt that on the night, Portugal just had a bit too much quality for their players. But as I said again, playing against that calibre of player would be a big learning curve for some of the Scotland boys.
It will indeed. We'll wrap up with the news that former Celtic manager Ange Postecoglou has returned to the dugout at Nottingham Forest. Joe, you were talking about Celtic not long ago there. The Celtic boss, Brendan Rodgers, was linked with the post. Do you think he'd have been attracted to that, given everything that's going on? And what do you make of Postecoglou going there?
I think he'd absolutely be attracted to it. I think there's... I wouldn't be surprised if he has not one eye on the door, out the door, but certainly keeping an eye on what's happening elsewhere, just because, and understandably so, because it's been a mess at Celtic, and the Premier League jobs don't come up all that often, or that they don't. If it was a possibility, they don't come up that often for Rodgers. You need to kind of strike with irons hot. So yeah, wouldn't be surprised if he looked at that as being an attractive proposition. However, I think Postecoglou was an obvious fit, and it's the fact that it happened so quickly after Nuno Espirito Santo left. You look at his relationship with the Notts Forest owner, Marinakis, and I think that can probably be a good thing. I think he's quite a volatile character, whereas I think because he has that relationship, Postecoglou will be a really good fit for Nottingham Forest, and I think it's a really, really good appointment and a decent job for him. I think they've got ambitions to push on after getting into Europe, and they've got a manager who delivers success wherever he's been.
Scott, on that Rodgers situation at Celtic, do you think he would have been looking at that job potentially? I know he said repeatedly that he'll be here for the 3 years, but the last month or so has been very testing for him. Do you think he would have had one eye on it, thinking, maybe?
I think it's hard to say. I think obviously we're taking into account the problems in terms of getting transfers in at the right time with the UEFA Champions League. I just think at this time, I think Brendan Rodgers is he said it with a bit of emphasis for the start that he's going to be there for a third season. I think if anything was to happen, it would most likely be the end of the season, and they'll see the season out. In terms of Ange Postecoglou going into Nottingham Forest, it'll be interesting to see how he can flip to his style so early on, because Nottingham Forest, if anybody's seen much of, they are very much a counter-attacking side. There's no question about it. They do have quality within there, but it'll be interesting to see how Big Ange implements his style, because there's no question about it. When he does get it right, it's some really exciting football.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Joel Sked and Scott Allan, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Thanks very much for listening.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
At this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated...
They said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
How did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts saviour to a wanted man?
He caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.